It says we're live.
There we go. This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports.
Good morning. You're listening to the Mac and Jack Sports Show on Northeast.
How y'all doing today? And welcome to the Mac and Jack Debate Show with our special guest co-host, the Philly Sports Guy. I'm your host, Mac, your co-host, Jack Hirsch, bringing you all the hottest topics in sports, old and new, as we start our debate. How you guys doing today? What's going on, Pags?
Good morning. Just recovering still from last weekend. My body's got to. My body takes about a week to come down from the energy level.
His heart is aching more than his body is, with the result. But Mac, that's what I love about this show. Technical difficulty right off the bat. That's like being offside the first play of the game. You have all this preparation, and then the guys confused the first play of the game. But that's what makes us so special.
Well, only the true professionals. Only the true professionals are the ones that can overcome the obstacles of this, the streaming of StreamYard and all the rest of the technical problems we have here. Jack, so how you doing? I mean, I see that down there that you're still down in Florida. When are you coming back?
Yeah, we're down here. Yeah. Weather's in the high 70s today and a bit rainy. So it's good. No complaints at all.
Right. Okay.
Okay, Mac. I mean, now that everyone's got the weather
let's get into the debate, guys. We have our first debate question is about Tim Carver. Was known for never rooting for the team he worked for, and Jack asked, do you think there's that fans have problems with this in their broadcast, having their broadcaster that isn't a homer? Pags, what do you think? Do you think when you're a broadcaster for a team that you should be a homer or more even, a more objective?
I think when you're doing a national broadcast, you need to be more even. You can't really do that and be able to choose a side. When you are doing more of a local broadcast, I feel that there should be things specifically that go towards being more of a homer. I feel that there you need to be a little more specific to the local crowd. And that's what I wasn't a big fan of when he was doing the local broadcast in Philadelphia.
Right. Well, he did local broadcasts for the Mets as well. I don't know whether you recall for a while. And I always got the impression that look on the screen, Pax.
I know.
You're the Philly fan. He's the Philly hater. But we'll get to that in a moment. but Tim McCarver was always very indifferent. He prided himself in being impartial, completely impartial. But I think if a team hires you as a fan, you want to know that the broadcaster wants the team to win, but you want him to do an impartial report for the most part, but you want to know he's happy that the team is having success. Look, if Pax, for example, is hired to do the Philadelphia Philly broadcasts, okay, he wouldn't be gushing over each thing with the Phillies. If they're playing poorly, he would say so. He would call it like he saw it, but people would know he wants the Phillies to have success. But Tim McCarver was so indifferent, like he couldn't care less. And we're talking about, it could be an old team he played for, whatever. That was just his style. It didn't reflect on the type of person he was at all. That was just his broadcast style. And as a fan, I like the broadcaster, to want our team to win, but, at least give us that sense. But Tim McCarver, it seemed like he just didn't care one way or the other. He was there to do it. It was strictly a job to him. It's like guys, it's like hiring someone, a regular babysitter, okay? a regular babysitter, you want the babysitter to at least care for your kid after a while, not just be very professional and do the job the way it's supposed to be done. You want there to be a certain caring. And, you got the idea, Tim McCarver, the ultimate professional. It was strictly business.
Well, good morning, Rick. Glad to have you aboard, Rick. I always love it when you come in. Jack, I guess, and Pags, I guess you want the broadcaster to be honest, but you want it to be excited too. I mean, when you hear that play being called by one of the local broadcasters, a guy goes down and makes a bucket or throws a touchdown. You love to have. It's like he's enjoying the game with you, and I think there's nothing wrong with that. Of course, you want to be professional too. You don't want him overly zealous or making bad comments on the other team or something like that. And Tim McCarver was a true professional. I mean, not only a former World Series baseball player, but one of the top broadcasters in baseball. So, he passed away, and I think baseball should thank Tim Carver for what he's done.
No, absolutely, Mac. He had that one incident with Deion Sanders, and as much integrity as Tim McCarver had, and he was very sincere in his views. I didn't always agree, and I didn't like what Deion Sanders in the locker room after the Braves clinched to go to the World Series. Deion Sanders snuck up behind him and he poured some cold water on him, something because of something McCarver said about Deion Sanders. And even though I found it appalling, Deion Sanders' behavior and the commissioner's office should have stepped in, maybe suspended Deion Sanders, but sports was more tolerant at the time of the lunacy that went on. Tim McCarver had said about Deion Sanders how selfish he was on the air because it was a Sunday night playoff game for the Braves. But Deion Sanders earlier that day played for the Atlanta Falcons. And in the NFL game, he was having double duty. And Deion Sanders had spoken with his teammates about it. And the Brave organization allowed it because Deion Sanders was a great base stealing threat. He was in a position to help the Braves. So, and Deion Sanders was a unique athlete who could be a star NFL player and then have an impact on a baseball game later that same day. So all he was venting to McCarver how selfish Deion Sanders was not fulfilling his obligation to the Braves, but he also had an obligation to the Falcons, if you want to think of it. It's a hard thing to do, but he really unloaded on Deion Sanders, and I thought it was a bit unfair.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess, different broadcasters might have took it a different way, or maybe Tim did go a little too far. But Jack, you got to admit that he did have a high impact on the baseball world.
Oh, he did. No, listen, one of the great baseball broadcasters of all time, and that's why it lasted so long. I mean, he had this great, clear, distinct voice. He explained the game to you pretty clearly. He didn't talk down on people. I felt there were no real airs about him like that. He didn't come with a feeling of superiority in the broadcast booth. And he just explained the game as it was unfolding. He didn't overtalk or undertalk.
All right. Okay. So we'll get to our second topic. And of course, this is Pag's favorite team, the New York Knicks. Should the Knicks seriously explore moving on from R.J. Barrett in the offseason if he continues to perform on the same level as he is doing now? Jack, you wrote the question. I know you're a Knicks fan, just like I am. And what are your thoughts on R.J. Barrett? I mean, he was drafted, I think it was number 2, if I'm not mistaken, by the Knicks. And, he was supposed to.
Third. I'm sorry, Matt. Zion Williamson, Jay Morant, and then R.J. Barrett in that draft.
Okay, so it's still very, very high. Yeah. He's played pretty well for the Knicks overall. He seemed to be getting better every year. Now he's starting to slump. I don't know if it's because Brunson is there and maybe he's not getting the ball as much as he used to. Maybe he doesn't feel as like he did before. Maybe he felt better being maybe the top 2 on the team. I don't know what the reasons are. But, he sure has fallen off a little bit, Jack. And what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think they should consider using RJ Barrett as a trade chip for sure. And trading him for a player that's kind of similar to him, who hasn't quite gotten up to expectations. I know you usually don't want to make a deal with a team within your own conference if you could avoid it, but it's still done. Look, the Nets traded Harden to the Sixers, didn't they? And they got a return from the Sixers. And it's worked out better for the Sixers at this point. But RJ Barrett, maybe for Maxey or something like that. I mean, a deal like that can make some sense because Maxey's underachieving by a little bit with the Sixers. He's leveled out a bit. He hasn't taken the next step to really get better. RJ Barrett, pretty good player. Third year, I don't think he's ever going to be a star in this league, but he could be a very good, solid player who could have an impact. Okay. And I just don't see RJ Barrett turning into a star type player or a perennial all-star, even an all-star period. Maybe on a given year, he makes an all-star team as a reserve. But I think the Knicks should seriously consider moving on from RJ Barrett. If they could put a package together to get a really good player, he would be the centerpiece of that package. And I think there are enough teams out there who would find an RJ Barrett very appealing for their team.
Well, when you mentioned Maxey, Pat's kind of grimaced over there. I don't think he would like that kind of trade.
Off the bench, he's not even starting now.
What do you think, Pax?
I don't even know who RJ Barrett is. So, I mean, that just explains to me. I do know who Maxey is, though. And, yeah, he started the season and got hurt. And they've now got him coming off of the bench as the sixth man, giving a little bit of energy to the team. That's where he seems to fit best right now, especially with the way that this team's constructed. So, I don't know that RJ Barrett would make a difference, and that would be a good trade because I don't pay any attention to the Knicks, and the Knicks stink as far as I'm concerned. So I don't know that it would be a well-received trade in Philadelphia if they were to do that.
Yeah. No, I'm just saying, you talk about an NBA championship. Sometimes a team needs to get tweaked if possible. 76ers probably need a tweak to go to the next level. It's chancy because they could fall backwards and become worse. Right now, the Celtics and Bucks are going to be there at the end of the year, battling to see who goes into the finals. The Sixers are a step behind them. The Sixers conceivably could go to the finals, conceivably, if everything kind of falls into place. But the way they are now, do they need to just tweak the team? Maybe if they got RJ Barrett and he improves a little bit, not even a lot, a little bit, that could be the thing to push him over the top. But of course, you have to give something back. And the Knicks aren't going to take a Tobias Harris back. You need the chips in a deal like that.
Rick Sherlock says he's lost interest in the NBA, but Keith had asked him. Keith Angle is who he's referring to. TGI Sports Talk. He's on our show weekly. He's on vacation right now, but anyway, he said had asked me to check the Knicks out. RJ seems like a selfish player, so I don't know if there's any.
Up a lot. He'll post up a lot, so I wouldn't call him a selfish player. No, he just never had that reputation.
Well, to me, one of the hardest things for me to follow is the NBA trades. They got 14 trades and 3 team trades and this package for that package. So I don't understand the way the NBA trades anymore. There's always a lot of movement and there's a lot of players that are coming back to a team and going to another team. It's crazy to me the way they package deals together. I think, Jack, you've got to see what you can get for RJ Barrett. You've got to make some inquiries. to other teams. You've got to see what kind of package they want. What are you going to get back for R.J. Barrett?
Well, the trade
There's
deadline passed. We're talking about more next year. in
Yes,
reality.
yeah, I understand. So again, that will see how R.J. Barrett finishes the season too, right? If he comes on at the end of the season, the Knicks would probably keep him. If he doesn't, then he probably
You
gets
know,
traded.
we're talking about a team that needs a jolt. And the Sixers are under a lot more pressure than the Knicks, because if the Knicks win one playoff series, which they're capable of doing, the year's been a big success for the fans. One playoff series, because they haven't done that in ages. Sixers, if they win one playoff series and get eliminated, the year's been a disappointment. Okay, so I get the feeling, just a feeling here, guys, that the Sixers might make a little bit of a bold move. It won't cost them much, as far as players or whatever. Maybe Russell Westbrook goes to Philadelphia. Just to give him a surge of energy.
No way.
He played with James Harden in OKC. So there is the familiarity. If James Harden goes to the front office, he says to Daryl Morey, let's take a chance. I can play with Russell. We can play together. The Sixers need an infusion, something to excite their fan base.
Russell Westbrook ain't going to be it.
He's an exciting player. He's a big name.
No, he's not. He should have been out of the league 3 years ago.
If there's an announcement today, Russell Westbrook is going to the 76ers, 76er fans will be salivating. No.
You are wrong. You are so dead wrong. They would probably riot more than they did for the Eagles game.
They wouldn't have to give anything up for him.
Well, yeah, because he stinks.
I mean, maybe Russell Westbrook, who I've been critical of, we've given up too much of a knock on. If I'm looking for little evidence that Russell Wilson could help a team, and I don't have a lot of evidence on that, I'll admit, I don't have a lot of evidence at all. He was with the Washington Wizards, a couple of years ago.
Yep, that's where my relationship with Russell Westbrook began. He hated me starting from that point.
Well, Pags, I mean, calling him Russell Westbrook. Westbrook. I mean, you call him.
I don't need to call him. I just call him Russell, and trust me, he don't like me, not even a little bit. I have a video showing how much he likes me.
He is a little sensitive. Okay, he is a little. He reminds me of a school teacher I knew who didn't have any hair on his head, and when his students called him Baldy, he went crazy. All he had to do was ignore it, and they stopped calling him it. Act like it doesn't bother you. And that ends it after a little while. But he'd go crazy, so they would keep it up. And that's Russell Westbrook. I mean, you can't get upset they're calling you a name unless they're cursing you out. I mean, you know what I was called? I went to school. I was called Hershey Bar. Okay? My whole life. I didn't respond to it. What did I care? Imagine I went ballistic on it. I go crazy about it.
Wait a minute, Jack. Wait a minute. Why did they call you Hershey Bar? Now
I didn't even want to ask. I didn't even want to ask.
Hershey bars were they're still popular, I think, but they were really popular at the time because they didn't have all these candies. So it was one of the top candies to get the Hershey bars. Hershey bar.
Jack Hershey.
I mean, I looked at it as a compliment in a way, and leave alone. But people, their names, certain names should get. I don't know, should they get changed? Because if someone wants to keep their name and they could get ridiculed, they should maybe adjust it. Listen, the field goal kicker for the Buccaneers, Ryan Suckup. Yeah. I mean, imagine he probably heard things about his name, but he apparently kept his name. It depends on how much you can weather. I mean, I know someone who changed his last name because his last name was Schmuckler. Okay, so imagine they're calling you for short, affectionately.
I don't know, folks. I don't know how we ended up here, but anyway.
No, because Pags taunted Russell Westbrook. I always call him Russell Westbrook.
I
Right.
did never
Right.
call them West Brick. He
Oh,
that
you
was
never
that was
did.
done for people in LA, and that's when he came out and said, "Oh man, I'm getting disrespected by my name, blah blah blah." I only ever called them Russell, and I would do
Right.
the Daryl chant to Russell, and he couldn't handle.
Well, there you go. So,
Yeah,
folks,
doing that.
Rick Sherlock.
And
Speaking of riots, they had a full-out brawl at the Rivers Casino in Schenectady after the Super Bowl.
I didn't know about this. What was the riot about?
I guess the Super Bowl.
I mean,
guess
was it just fans having a little too much, or was it because were there Eagle fans? I can imagine Eagle fans in Schenectady like so much going to watch the game. But I'm a big believer that the majority of people. Correct me if you think I'm wrong. The majority of people who go to a Super Bowl party, they're not Super Bowl fans. They care more about the party than the game. I mean, in bars, maybe it's a little different because you want to connect with someone, have a beer, and you tend to watch the game in the bar, more than just mingling. You're talking to the people around you, but you're watching the game play by play.
Okay.
And then you
Rick,
could be old school like me. I just like to watch it on my own, even though we did a show, and just concentrate on football 100%.
Rick, let us know what happened with them riots, why they happened, if you could. So moving on, we have should the Jets move on from quarterback Mike White? Mike White came in, I think it was last year, played a couple of good games, and then didn't play that good at all. I mean, he seems like he is, he's an NFL quarterback, no doubt about that. Probably a second stringer. Pax. I mean, second string quarterbacks are very important, more than they've ever been in the NFL, because the NFL quarterbacks get hurt a lot more than they used in the past. So, what do you think about Mike White? Do you think that the Jets should hold on to him or maybe trade him, see if they can get something else for him?
You guys always asking me about these New York teams like I follow them. I have no idea. I think that Mike White is okay. You know what I mean? That they're still going to be struggling at quarterback. I think that Joe Douglas should actually go get a real quarterback. I think you got to determine, sometimes you got to cut your losses. They're going to have a higher draft pick than most. I told you, I think that there's Tyson Bagent is probably a really good fit for that team. That he's broken all those types of records. He's
not ready to come in and start, Pax. The guy you're mentioning, who I'm not familiar with, let's say he has this untapped potential. Realistically, he just make the roster, and maybe down the road, he'd play if he's as good as you say he is. But he's certainly not going to quarterback any team next year.
How do you know that? I mean, you're already assuming that he's not good enough.
Pax, you got to make plans who your starter is, and they're not going. If you're getting this, what's his name, Tyson, whatever,
Bagent.
Bagent, you get him, and you put him on the roster with Zach Wilson, Mike White. Who the heck is going to start? You don't have a starter. They're not starting Zach Wilson next year. That's apparent, okay? He's going to have to be a backup. They're looking for a quarterback, and they're not going to get an unproven commodity. I dread the idea of them getting Derek Carr, even though I think he would help for 1 year, perhaps. It's a sticky situation. But the question with Mike White, he was the Jet backup. He became a little bit of a folk hero when he replaced Zach Wilson because he moved the offense a bit better than Zach Wilson, and the Jet players were wearing shirts, "We love Mike White." To me, that's the reason you get rid of Mike White in part. If you're committed to keeping Zach Wilson, even as a second string, you can't have Mike White around, because fans are going to ask, if whoever you get as a quarterback gets injured, why isn't Mike White playing? You just can't have Mike White on the team. You just have to address the quarterback situation. Maybe make a bold move in the draft to move up. Give them 3 number ones. Your number one this year, 2 more number ones, and for all you know, the Bears will give you the number 1 pick for 3 number ones. For all you know, and you give them a 3rd round pick as well. Bold move, go after Bryce Young. I mean, really roll the dice because the Jets have to do something, but you don't want Mike White breathing down Zach Wilson's back. It's just not good. If you're not keeping Zach Wilson, then keep Mike White. But the Jets are committed to keeping Zach Wilson because they picked him number 2 overall in the draft. It's like investing money in something. You don't want to admit you lost it, so you're holding on to that investment a little while longer because you're trying – to justify it in some way.
Yeah, I mean the Jets. That's all the Jets really need is a good quarterback. And I got another question about that down the road, so I'm not going to give that away. But there's going to be a lot of quarterbacks available. A lot of veteran. There's a lot of free agents out there right now that they could make a play for. They're saying that 4 out of the top 4 quarterbacks. I mean the top 4 draft picks will be quarterbacks out of the first 10. And, there's a lot of talent out there, Jack. Mike White, I think Mike White is a tough guy. I think he's a competitor. I think that when he's on the field, players like him. I don't know if you get rid of that. Zach Wilson is a problem. I know that. But if Zach Wilson can't handle New York, then he's going to be moved out, and that's for sure.
I don't know that he can't handle New York per se. Zach Wilson just hasn't been good, point blank. The Jets were 2-5 with Mike White. So let's not hear how great Mike White was. He had a chance, Mike White, if he went on a late season surge, to actually win the job for next year. But, he got hurt in part. They lost a couple of games. All in all, he performed well for backup. You're right, quantity-wise, Mac, with what you're saying about a lot of quarterback options. But to me, are they really that appealing like an Andy Dalton? You want an Andy Dalton as a backup, not as a starter. Baker Mayfield, borderline starter. He might have some appeal because you could get him for nothing. That's what would make you wouldn't have to give anything up. And you're just looking down the list, and it's teams who want to get one of the elite quarterbacks, Bryce Young or Stroud. They're really going to have to make a bold move to move up. And there's some talk that the Bears just might trade Justin Fields, because they go number 1 overall. So, they might take Young and trade Fields. But what would Justin Fields be worth in draft capital? That's the question.
And not only that, would they be better off taking a quarterback that's going to be very good, a big guy that can throw in Chicago and give up something for a rookie that's unproven in the NFL? That's going to be a real tough position.
Bryce Young is seriously a risk. I think he's really a risk.
He's small, Jack. He's smaller than Fields. He hasn't played in Chicago outdoors like that. He plays down in South with good weather. I don't know if it was a dome or something. If Chicago had a dome, I think that would be a great play for Chicago.
Good point.
But outside, you got to be able to throw the ball hard in that wind. He's a tough, big guy. He seems to be made for the Bears, but they might do it. And if Justin Fields goes somewhere else and becomes a star, jobs are going to be lost in Chicago. That's for sure. So that's a chance they would have to take. So very interesting. A lot of news coming out of the NFL, and a lot of free agents are up for signing, and of course contracts have got to be signed. A lot of stuff going on in the NFL. Crazy for me. So. Should the Kansas City Chiefs organization condemn Juju Schuster for his tweet about the Eagles cornerback James Bradbury? What do you think, Pags? You're an Eagles fan. What do you think?
I don't think they will. I don't think that it's they got to allow. This is like a freedom of speech type of situation that it falls under, like legitimately. He was on a 1-year deal. Are they going to re-sign him anyways? Probably not. So he's a free agent right now. So I don't know that they have to do anything at all.
Why
they're
wouldn't
probably
they
not going to resign him.
resign him? Why wouldn't they resign him? They need, receiver.
I think that you're going to be able to get other receivers, and I think that you could find somebody who is better than he is. That's what I think. I don't think that he was really congruent with Mahomes as well as he could have been, and you know he's just blah. You know what I mean? So I think that his tweet shows exactly where his head is at. That he's too worried about getting likes than it is worried about the football field, and I
You
think
know
that
what?
that speaks volumes.
This is in all of sports, not just this latest thing with Juju Schuster. When one of your players does something, dumb, unclassy, the teams don't condemn him. They back him up. That mentality, well, we're going to back up our own no matter what. They're not going to agree with what he did, but they're not going to condemn it. And it goes on like all the time. And then they whine when the same thing happens to them. They complain. Okay,
Well, I did find it interesting that Bradbury, who's also a free agent, had his teammates back him up and backed up JJ, Schuster.
No. Bradbury was extremely classy. Okay, he was
He
the
was.
victim of an uncalled for taunt. I mean, listen, who's the unclassy, one of the most unclassy people who played in the NFL? Richard Sherman, completely lacked class. He was a big mouth blowhard. That's what Richard Sherman was. And that got him a broadcasting job because these major outlets love the big mouths who just talk nonsense. They love the arrogance, okay?
They also got him a punch in the mouth by a defensive lineman at one.
Okay, but with Richard Sherman, had this thing like after when the 49ers the Seahawks beat the 49ers to go to the Super Bowl, he caught a deflection like a tip pass or something. I mean, he helped break up a pass with Michael Crabtree at the end of the game and was completely uncalled for. He trashed Robert Crabtree, and there was no evidence that they had a feud going. Maybe there was one-on-one talk on the field that goes on all the time, but it was so unclassy the way he targeted, Crabtree. And he's done it other times. He criticized Peyton Manning, how he threw the ball, blah, blah, blah. The big mouth always comes out with Richard Sherman, okay?
Right.
But teams don't condemn it. And look who's on the air now. Look at some of the guys who are working for major outlets like ESPN. Michael Irvin, even though we hope he's innocent of this latest thing, but he did get into his share of controversy, put it this way, off the field when he was playing, a lot of it. On the field, he wasn't the best citizen. Despite what Jeff Coates says, there's a story of Jimmy Johnson telling the pilot to take off with the team because Michael Irvin was late. He wasn't the most reliable guy always, okay? But Jeff Coates going to be protective of his former teammate, Keyshawn Johnson, the ultimate eye guy, the ultimate selfish guy who didn't get along with Wayne Corbett, would always look to trash his fellow receiver on his team. And just look, Sterling, Shannon Sharp, the mouth that roars. The mouth that roars, always yak, 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 always in a authoritative, big voice, even though he seems like a highly intelligent guy, he's also a big blowhard, at times. And just look at these guys who they're hiring, even coaches like, and I like Rex Ryan, but Rex would be a little bold, in how he proclaimed things. And that's just the style, have a big mouth, be arrogant. Who's going to probably get a broadcasting position there at ESPN? Like a guy like Antonio Brown. Those are the type of guys that they look for, the guys who are lightning bets.
No, he will not get a job at ESPN.
I don't think so either. He's too volatile.
Well, maybe the NFL Network will hire him. A Fox.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Not me either. I think he's too volatile. I mean, I think he's too crazy. You know, you got
Yeah,
got
I
big
mean,
up-
he's had too many run-ins with law enforcement.
yeah, he's
Okay,
That's-
maybe that. Yeah, maybe that. Maybe in his case, yeah, there may have been like a little,
too.
too much going on. But I just want to mention one case in point. Even baseball years ago, I don't know, Pags, whether you recall this. Tino, a Yankee player hits a home run. Tino Martinez gets up next against Armando Benitez. Benitez throws a blazing fastball, deliberately hits the next batter in the back, Tino Martinez. And what was Tino Martinez's crime? He was getting up after a guy hit a homer off, Armando Benitez. And of course, both dugouts empty. There's a major brawl going on. From the Baltimore Orioles, I, protect my guy just enough, but I let him take a beating because he's putting all of them at risk. So now when the Orioles get up after, if one of their guys gets hit, they're whining and they're complaining and they want to have a go at it. Well, the reason you're getting hit is because of your teammate. If you let the other teammate know the guy who did that on your team, he's standing alone. We don't support him. He's a complete jerk. We can't stand it. Don't retaliate on us. And if I'm the manager, I'm going to put Armando Benitez up at the plate with a bat in his hand after that. And I'm going to let the other manager know, no, tell your guys he's going to be hitting for us. And then he gets up Armando Benitez with a bat.
Bags, Jack is in rare form today. We have gone all the way from, what are we talking about? Bradbury? Is that who we were originally talking about? Bradbury is going to be a free agent. What do you think? What do you think is going to happen there, Pags? I mean, do you think the Eagles re-sign him? What's the price tag going to be? What do you think is going to happen?
I think that they are, when they're choosing between whether it's going to be Bradbury or Gardner Johnson, that they're going to probably go with Gardner Johnson. I think that Bradbury's price tag is probably going to be a little higher, and it's he's going to wind up getting a really big contract, and I don't know that they're going to be able to do both.
Okay.
He was.
I don't know. Is Bradbury really going to be getting that big a contract? He's not going to be paid like one of the top corners. He's just, I just don't see
What?
it.
Okay. I'm wrong.
No. Maybe I'm wrong, but I consider him the caliber of, let's say, a Landon Collins when, he left the Giants and Washington signed them. An appealing player. But in a couple of years, if he leaves the Eagles, I could see him having a reunion with the Eagles in a couple of years.
I think he's going to get 3 years somewhere around, probably close to like $7 million.
How much?
57, 60, somewhere around there.
I don't see it. No, not for his position. I just don't see it.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't see it.
He's one of the best cornerbacks in the league. He's one of the best cornerbacks in the league. And cornerbacks are at a premium.
Okay.
16 to 19 million dollars a year.
As far as Juju goes, I mean, who really cares? This is just an extra thing to flood Twitter with. I mean, Jack. I mean, they've been talking trash to the other team since football's began. It was on the field. It wasn't in Twitter. Social media.
Mac. Before the Bengals played the Chiefs, Bengal players were taunting the Chiefs, calling it Burrowhead Stadium, stuff like that. It ticked off the Chiefs, that trash talk.
Yeah, that's fine.
So, okay, which it should have. Now, one of their own is trash talking after the game. Okay, and it's uncalled for, completely uncalled for.
Yeah, but it spoke volumes that none of his teammates backed him. None of his teammates came to his aid. The Eagles, like I said, 3 or 4 Eagles responded. Included Darius Slay, including A.J. Brown. And they all did it kind of classy.
They didn't condemn him. Patrick Mahomes is someone that Kelsey should have said, look, he shouldn't have said that. That's uncalled for. Just make a remark completely uncalled for that James Bradbury, is a great player and a classy individual. They could have made a statement. We don't agree. We wish he hadn't said that. They don't have to call him, come down on Schuster to the point where they're really calling him names. But they could have said something about it.
Yeah, I don't think that they're going to do that.
No.
I don't think that they're going to do that.
Whatever happened to thick skin? I mean, what do you care what people say about you? You go out there, you play the game. Who cares? I mean, to me, this is just fodder for talk. That's all this is, and this, of course, that's what we do.
No, it's taunting, Mac. It's taunting.
What's so, Jack? So what?
Putting a guy down when the game is over goes completely against any semblance of sportsmanship.
That's been going on.
Bradbury feels bad enough, first of all, that the Eagles lost the game. Secondly, his part in it. And he was so classy taking accountability. He turned out to be an inspiration for people taking accountability as much as it might hurt.
And he cares about what Juju says about him. Really? You really believe that?
It has to be hurtful because you have friends and other people who make remarks about it. And you could say, I couldn't care less. Look, another athlete that was pretty unclassy, Patrick Beverley, the way he put Chris Paul down, he went out of his way in the beginning of the NBA season. Chris Paul is nothing. He's not even a challenge. He's not even this. He's not even that. Sometimes you keep quiet. An athlete, a boxer, he asked me about boxing. Timmy Bradley is going in the Hall of Fame this year. He had this trainer throughout the bulk of his career, practically his whole career, called Joel Diaz. And he switched for the last couple of fights of his career. He went over to Teddy Atlas, great trainer. And Bradley said, after being a world champion and forging this great career, he said, I learned more in 3 days with Teddy Atlas than I learned in all my years with Joel Diaz. Why, even if you feel that way, even if you do, why say that? You had this relationship with Joel Diaz that was a good one the majority of the time. Why trash him like that? Did I learn more with someone over 3 days than all the years with another person? Okay?
I mean, I don't know, Jack.
I could say I could do a 3-hour show with someone, and I could say I had more fun in the 3 hours with you than I did in all my years with Mac. Imagine I said that. Okay? I mean, even if I felt that way, that's kind of hurtful. Right?
Hey, listen, I agree with you, Jack, to a point. I mean, listen, they're adults. We're not on the schoolyard. I don't know. I mean, I think we make a little too much of little things when the more important things in sports going on. But, like I said, maybe you got a point. A little boxing here. And to me, this really isn't boxing, but Jake Paul, YouTube sensation. If this is the question, folks, if Paul defeats Tommy Fury, and that's the brother of Tyson Fury, the WBC plans to, rate him as a top 10 cruiserweight, Jack, right?
Yeah, in that rating.
Would this be fair?
10. No, of course it's not fair. But of course it's not fair, but these sanctioning bodies, they twist things. I think there's a method to the WBC's madness. Okay, their president, actually Mauricio Suleiman, such a nice guy, but he's following kind of in the footsteps of his, late dad who ran the organization. They would twist things. Now, the WBC could rate Jake Paul in the top 10. Maybe the WBC cruiserweight champion, whoever it is at the time, I think one of the African fighters, not that well known, maybe Jake Paul gets to the point where he could win a belt, maybe a vacant WBC title. Maybe the WBC even declares Jake Paul its champion in some way, shape, or form. It gets him there. Now they're going to want to match their favorite son, Canelo Alvarez, because the WBC is Mexican-based. to win a cruiserweight title. And Jake Paul's good for business. He's good for the sanctioning fee. The sanctioning bodies get 3% of the boxer's purse.
Okay.
3% they have to pay over for the honor of holding their title. And Jake Paul, I mean, he attracts a lot of people. He fights on pay-per-view next week. As an attraction, yeah, I mean, you could rate him as an attraction for maybe some of the dollars he brings in, but based on merit, he's just basically beaten mixed martial artists and whatever. Tommy Fury is the first real boxer he's facing, and even that's questionable. Tommy Fury's done nothing as a pro. He's just Tyson Fury's brother, so you get that build up to the fight. Boxing is ridiculous. If football was like boxing, I give you my word, one of there'd be 4 governing bodies of the NFL, and one of them would have the Philadelphia Eagles right now pegged as NFL champions.
Well,
they would, for real.
Yes. It is crazy the way boxing is run today.
They would say there's a disputed call. We're vacating it. They're going to say the Chiefs have 60 days to play the Eagles again or forfeit their title. And if the Chiefs wouldn't play the Eagles within 60 days, you know what they would then say? They do something crazy, like they let the Washington Commanders play the Eagles for the vacant title. For real. Or the Giants. They bring the Giants in the ring.
Yeah, I know that the boxing has really gone crazy. Pags, I mean, I know I don't know if you know Jake Paul or Tommy Fury or anything, but I mean, what do you think about a YouTube fighter, a star, fighting a boxer that isn't that good, that might lead him to a cruiserweight contender? What do you think about all that?
I think that boxing is doing whatever it can to remain relevant because of the MMA. That's what I think. I think that the Paul brothers are doing this very specifically. Boxing has always been a sport that required the fanfare, and social media is all about fanfare. So that's why this is a good mix. I think that, I have a good friend of mine who is Damon Feldman, who does celebrity boxing, and it's always been looked at as a joke. It's not been taken any bit seriously whatsoever. However, he's been able to make a career out of it. He's been able to do this, and he's been doing it now for over 15 years.
Wow.
And there's a reason for that, because boxing is still looked at as a sport. And if you put enough fanfare behind it, you're going to get people to go watch it. And he's able to sell pay-per-views. He's able to do different things all the way around. If Frank is not too much of a chicken, about it, maybe I can get him in the ring and he can actually see what it's like to fight an eagle, for real, and get, wind up getting knocked on his butt. That being said, it's.
But that's it. Let's say hypothetically, even though we're joking around, talk goes back between you and Laterzo, the Philly fan and the Philly hater, and word gets all around Philadelphia. You guys can do a better gate than actually a couple of decent, valid fighters from Philadelphia. That's just the nature of what we live in. It's entertainment in this day and age. I'm always critical of these pay-per-view shows. I rarely get them because they're overpriced. They give you a halfway decent main event, but they want to charge you like $80 to see this undercard.
Isn't it? Let's talk about. Wasn't the biggest box office for a boxing match between Ewan McGregor and like $400 million? I mean, that was all fanfare. As was bap, and talk, and that's what spawned the Paul brothers to even take this on, because they see the dollar signs attached to it. that they've got a following. They are athletic enough to start the training process. I mean, let's face it, they have become boxers because they started to put in the work and started to do the training. So, yes, of course, he is not been in the boxing world for so long. He can't go up against real boxers as of yet, or like real good
Well,
boxers
Jake
as
Paul
of yet.
stayed in the gym. You can make an argument that Jake Paul is improving, that he
Absolutely.
can
But
an
you're not going to go
average
up against a
fighter that's
you're
been
not going
on
to
the
go up against a top tier contender. I mean, he's only had what, four fights. You're not ready for a top tier contender.
no,
You're
no, he's
not.
had more than that. I'm not sure it's the exact amount, 6 or 7, but it's basically he's been in a gym and now Carl Froch, long retired, a British a middleweight slash super middleweight. He's talking of coming out of retirement to fight, Jake Paul because he's sick of it. He thinks Jake Paul is a joke. And even an old washed up version of Carl Froch should be too much for Jake Paul. But again, it's entertainment. I see this as a member of the media. I'm an old time boxing person. I see these young guys who are in reality fanboys compared to me, but they have people following them. So kudos to them. I'm very supportive, of them. But boxing history to them started with Floyd Mayweather, So
Right, right. I mean, listen, I think as you said, it's more entertainment than sports today. I think Jake Paul has been putting the work in. He may become a decent boxer, in a couple of years or so, if he sticks with it. Tommy Fury, not really a competition, isn't good fighting real boxers. So Jake Paul, he might beat, might not beat. Who knows? Um, as
it's
far as
funny, you
bringing him
wouldn't
to,
know him into Canelo Alvarez. If they could maneuver him into a fight against Canelo Alvarez, the curiosity factor is tremendous,
yeah,
tremendous, because you wonder could Jake Paul compete? Listen, one of the biggest matches in boxing that never took place was Will Chamberlain against Muhammad Ali. There was serious talk, and there were a lot of people who thought Chamberlain might actually have a chance. Now,
yeah.
Chamberlain would have had about as much chance as if you train Muhammad Ali for 1 year and put him up against Magic Johnson one-on-one during a game. I mean, what was
I'd agree with that. That it would be a very, like, because of his length and the just the strength. He was an athlete, so if he was able to get a couple of punches on Ali, he could maybe possibly do some damage enough. But Ali, as a boxer, all he would know is to get close, and now you've taken away all of the strength that Chamberlain would have, and that Chamberlain would lose that battle. Like, it
Right.
just there was just no way that you'd be able to really do that in any meaningful way. However, initial thought process would be, yeah, that there could be a chance that there is a slight puncher's chance for Will Chamberlain because he does have the length. If you can keep him away and jab and jab and jab and put some pressure into those jabs, that you might be able to do some damage to Muhammad Ali. But again, Muhammad, as smart of a boxer as he was just going to be able to take it. Was going to be able to do that, and it was going to end in 3 rounds. Plus, the reason why you don't have that fight is because neither one of them can afford the loss. Will Chamberlain can't lose that fight. Like when you had with Ewan McGregor, he wasn't a boxer. You could tell he wasn't a boxer. He didn't know what he was doing.
there's a mixed
And
martial artist, so he did have some boxing skills. Because mixed martial artists also have boxing to a degree in their repertoire.
right, but there were a lot of things that he got stopped doing because he started to revert to MMA style, and obviously the longevity was killed him. There was no way he was going to be able to go 6 rounds because he just didn't have that type of stamina. So those are the types of things that you have to think about. the reason why I'm sure that fight never happened was because you don't want to watch, you know, Will Chamberlain lose,
No,
and
no.
you don't
The
want to
reason
watch
it didn't
Muhammad Ali
happen.
lose either.
The reason it didn't happen, Chamberlain was very close to signing the contract. All parties were together. Bob Arum, the promoter, told Muhammad Ali, keep your mouth shut. Don't scare Chamberlain at all. Chamberlain walked back into the room, allegedly to sign the contract, and Ali, being Ali, started going, timber, timber. And Chamberlain left the room and didn't want to fight, got scared. You know what was the reality? Chamberlain would have had no shot against the likes of Muhammad Ali. I'll go a step further. There would have been a good number of amateur heavyweights who would have knocked Chamberlain out in a couple of rounds. And this is a Chamberlain who would have had his 6 months of preparation. A good number of amateur heavyweights he wouldn't have been able to beat.
Well,
Right.
I
No,
mean,
and I can believe that. It's just obviously, but yeah, you put Muhammad Ali, Chamberlain, and on a volleyball court, and I
Yeah,
bet you Chamberlain would kill him. You know
yeah,
what I mean?
absolutely.
So
Oh, he's a great athlete. You know,
Chamberlain
it's
did. He played professional volleyball after basketball. You know what I mean? So
you know, I don't know how long volleyball players train, train between matches or this or that, but maybe I'm wrong. And if someone has expert knowledge on volleyball, even though I once coached volleyball in high school, could Chamberlain have competed on the highest level in volleyball? You get the feeling,
he
I don't
did.
know,
Oh,
by
he
the net,
absolutely did.
by the
Yes,
net,
he
by the
absolutely did.
net, yes. But in the backcourt, having to rotate, I mean, there's a certain skill level there, keeping the ball alive. I know how great he'd be on spikes. He would jump up and meet the ball and shove it back down the throat of whoever else was attacking.
And I don't know enough about this, but I know that for once he retired from basketball, that there was that he literally played. There was a professional volleyball league. I can't imagine they got paid a
Yeah.
lot of money, but he played in that league that they won like 4 championships in that league. So he did play professional volleyball on the highest of levels. Now, I don't think that he was that back at that days. They still had amateurs do Olympics,
Yeah.
so there was
Not
no ability
yeah.
for him to do that. But
So I back to Jake Paul. I'm old school when it comes to boxing. I think that you should have to go through. They don't do it anymore, but you should have to go through progression. You should have to be able to go up through the ranks, beat number 5, beat number 4, beat number 3, beat number 2, and then you get a shot to fight for a championship. Those days are long gone, but that's what I would want to see.
you know what? Because
Jake
they
Paul,
vacate titles. I mean, I just saw something the other day that one of the titles was getting vacated. The IBF title, I think, for the cruiserweight, was getting vacated for some reason.
yeah.
Like they don't even really give a reason on why vacated, so that another 2 guys can fight for the title. It's just that, it's kind of like what Jack was saying. It's become more about just, oh, okay, we're more about the money. Oh, we don't want to have a unified belt anymore because it's not worth it. That takes away the money. If there's more championship belts out there, there's more championship fights. It looks like there's more money coming in. And the truth of the matter is that that's not, it doesn't sell the way it used to. Like I
I
remember Wide World of Sports when they had boxing matches. It was big deals. People would stop what they were doing. Stadiums would be filled and you would watch a boxing match. That was fun. That was like I remember watching the Hagler Hearns fight. I remember watching the Gotti uh
Mickey
fight. You
Ward.
know what I mean? Yeah. So like those were great fight. Hector Macho Camacho, he'd come in and do his little dance and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Entertaining. It was a boring fighter, Camacho. Boring, as is Mayweather, but it's personalities. I just
Right.
want to get back on Wilt Chamberlain one moment, okay? Because there are a few different Chamberlain stories here. I'm not sure is he in the Hall of Fame as a 76er or Laker. What's his legacy in Philadelphia? He did lead them to one championship, but it would usually always end in disappointment. The Sixers losing to the Celtics, and Bill Russell getting the glory, even though Chamberlain in reality was the better player.
He is highly revered here in Philadelphia because he was a Philadelphia boy. He was born in Overbrook. He went to West Catholic. I think it was West Catholic. I mean, he was the first college player of the
How do
city.
you trade him? How does he escape the Sixers? I mean, a talent like that, how does, you allow him to move on?
Money. It
I
all
guess
comes down to money.
But
Like that's
the Chamberlain stories, you kind of wonder whether they're shrouded in myth, some of them. Like I've heard several of them. For example, Larry Brown is saying he played a pickup game. This is Larry Brown, a very credible guy, but when did Larry Brown get carried away? He saw a pickup game going on with Wilt and Magic Johnson, and Johnson called a couple of fouls on Chamberlain, that really angered, Chamberlain. And from that moment on, Chamberlain kept swatting away every shot of Magic Johnson's. Now, we're talking about the great Magic Johnson. I find that hard to believe Magic Johnson is going to get all his shots swatted by Wilt Stilt because, this isn't a role player. This is Magic
Yeah, but you're also talking. I mean, you got to talk about somebody who is very well seasoned against a very young kid. Magic Johnson, even though it was Magic Johnson, I mean that there was, it's still a little bit like me playing against my 14-year-old son at basketball that I don't want him to get his shot off. That's where I kind of see that whole thing having to happen because they were not close in age. You know what I mean? So you had a very seasoned Wilt Chamberlain against a very young Magic Johnson. Absolutely, I could see that occur. And maybe he did get a couple of shots off that went airball. You know what I mean? But that's, I think, truth of the matter is that do I believe that he slept with 20,000 different women? No, but it sounds like a really good story. You know what I mean? It's
but you got a report in Philadelphia. I don't know whether you've met him, know him by the name of an old timer now, Sonny Hill.
Of course.
Right.
Of course, Sonny Hill. He's on the radio every Saturday and Sunday still.
But Sonny Hill tells this story. I just can't believe it. They were doing this movie, Arnold Schwarzenegger, that Chamberlain was in. He had like a little part of something. And
no, that was the first when he was like the king, not Terminator. What's it called? But it's got like a single name to it. He was the Barbarian, Conan the Barbarian.
But Arnold Schwarzenegger on the set, one of the great bodybuilders of all time, obviously extremely strong to lift those heavy weights, would be working out with weights on the side between sets. So Schwarzenegger, according to Hill, was struggling with a weight. Chamberlain just took it and picked it up 3-4 times casually and then put it down. Don't tell me Wilt Chamberlain could pick up weights in a superior fashion to Arnold Schwarzenegger.
So I think you're taking the story and changing it around a little bit to fit a certain narrative that you're making. I think that he probably went over there and was like, "Yep. Yeah, this is not anything in a professional manner or anything. Was just able to just go pick it up. I mean, because he was super strong. He was very physical, and he did take care of his body. I mean, I got to shake the hand. I got to shake his hands, and like I said, I watched 4 really tall guys walk into the room. I'm like, is that Wilt? Is that Wilt? Is that like? Because I was a young kid at the time. And then when he walked into the room, you knew it. And I literally ran after him. I said, Mr. Chamberlain, I just need to shake your hand. And of course, he shook my arm because his hand was, I got big hands, and his hand was like still 3 times the size of mine, but he lit up the room immediately. And yeah, you might embellish a little bit of the story to fit the narrative of of how larger than life he was, but there's a lot of truth in the story. I'd be willing to bet that every story that you're hearing is absolutely true. Now, did he
Well,
swat every?
Johnny Sample from Philadelphia, who was the Jets captain, a defensive back, captain of the defensive unit on the Jets Super Bowl winning team of Super Bowl III, told the story of Wilt Chamberlain with Big Daddy Lipscomb, a giant NFL guy. They were just talking, and Chamberlain was challenged on something, and he picked up Big Daddy by the armpit, just lifted him high in the air, and everyone was astonished. See that.
The folk,
yes. About that book. But Chamberlain, I'll tell you, he was the most fragile athlete mentally in Philadelphia until, I guess, Ben Simmons came along.
Well,
really,
the folklore of Wilt Chamberlain lives on in the Mac and Jacks Sports Debate Show. Folks, we're going to take a quick actual commercial. I'm going to play a funny bit, about 3 minutes of it, about marathon running for you. So I'm going to put that on, and then we'll do a promo thing. Let's see if I can get this all right and ready to rock. So we'll give it a shot, folks, see what happens, and we'll be right back after this commercial break. And again, let's see, Pop. All right, come on. Overly? Yeah, it's good enough. All right, let's give it a shot, folks. Is she gonna work for me, Pax? Yeah, here we go. Where is my speaker here? There we go.
still working? Not sure if this is working or not. Well, not to have just some dead air. I know you can't really see me over on this side, but I'm not sure if the commercial broadcast is working the way he expected it to. But just in case we're not. And since somebody wants to post over here, the greatest Eagles team in history, known for not one defensive stop in the second half of Soup 57. This guy can't really spell, and allowing Mahomes to go 13 for 14 in the second half with the incomplete pass to throwaway. Yes, it was the greatest Super Bowl. So I
Well, there you go, folks. There's a little bit by a famous comedian. I'm trying to to get his name for you. Jim Gaffigan. He did as you see, he did something with running. Let me bring down this overlay. Pretty funny. Jack, who was a marathon runner, I thought I know he enjoyed it. So let me get rid of this. There it is. So anyway, so that was I thought it'd be a little fun to play that, and he's a funny guy, Jack. And is he right? Is he right about all that running stuff?
Well, one of the best lines I ever heard many years ago, someone was mocking fun at marathon runners, and they came up with the best line saying, "In the long run, we are all dead." That was the answer. Yeah, I think they over dramatized things in the early years with marathon running. I don't know about now, talking about, runner's high. What the heck is runner's high? That's just fatigue. You're getting tired, runner's high. I mean, and all these like terms and this and that. And that's, it carried on to even coaches in track and field. Like you'd notice big events like the Olympics, if they had one runner who maybe wasn't quite as quick as another one and they were competing in the competition, they'd have them go out extra quick, because the logic was you would take the sprint away from the other guy because you would tire him out. But what about your own guy who's going out too quick? I mean, these coaches were like clueless, absolutely clueless. And the running community adopted their philosophy like it was gospel, having no idea what they were like listening to.
Well, I do run a little bit, or I did run a little bit, I should say. Before I got my my medical problem I have, and I did experience kind of, I guess you could call it a high, where I was running and my breathing was easy and it really didn't hurt my legs anymore. So I don't know if that's a runner's high or not, Jack, but it was some kind of feeling I'd experienced.
You weren't working hard enough, Mac, if you didn't feel anything. That's what it was, probably.
Is that what it was? All right.
There's no such thing, but it sounds good to runners like it and all the term. And
we had a couple of comments. Northeast Streaming Sports. I'm not sure who it is from. The greatest Eagles team in history, known for.
I can tell you who it's from.
Okay. Who's it from, Pax?
Frank.
All right, Frank, Super 57, and allowing Mahomes to
the
get
greatest Eagle team of all time is 1960 with Chuck Bednarik. That was the greatest Eagle team of all time.
Actually, you could arguably say 1949. 1949 was the greatest Eagles team of all time. That they still had Van Buren, Norm Van Brocklin. I mean, there was, and Chuck Bednarik was on that team as well. So although I understand why you would say 1960, it's a little bit closer to our time. But I think 1948 and 49, they were just, because Chuck won that team in 1949. So he did win 2 Super Bowls or 2 championships in essence, but nobody remembers the 49 team.
Yeah.
I think 2018 wasn't too bad either, Pack. So,
Oh no, they were a good team. But if you think about that, I mean, obviously being the underdogs in all 3 of the games, all 3 of their playoff games, and then realistically, that Patriots team was a really good Patriots team. They really weren't expected to win. We thought we could win, but they weren't expected to win. This one was a little bit on the other side. I think that they were evenly matched. I mean, they just couldn't make that. They couldn't handle that many mistakes. They might have been able to get away with one mistake. 2 or 3 mistakes was just too many to make against these teams. This team was just way too evenly matched up, and ultimately, Kansas City made less mistakes.
Mac, it's early on. Everyone always likes to talk about next year when the season ends. Do you feel the Giants can overtake the Eagles and win the division?
I don't know. I don't think so, Jack. I don't think they're ready yet. I think the Eagles are a more talented team still. Giants still have a long way to go, especially on offense, to play with the Eagles. So I think it's going to take a couple of years. I think they can play with Dallas next year. I don't think Dallas has improved. I don't know what they'll do this year, but I think the Giants will pick up as many good draft picks and maybe free agents as Dallas will. So I think they'll give Dallas a fight. The Eagles are still a couple years away, if I'm being honest. I think that's Frank again saying, Jimmy Pags, unlike most Eagle fans, you handle winning and losing well. So a little compliment to Pags.
But Pags, make no mistake about it, he's not saying it, but Pags feels the Eagles did get hosed in the game. He's not saying it because he's being a sportsman, but he really feels that way.
You know what? There's a lot that, like I said, this was a team loss, and I go as far as to say, I said all year long that I thought that the Eagles would not lose any games that they remained focused for. And I feel like that there were a couple of really main pieces that lost a little bit of focus. I think that one of them was Jonathan Gannon. I don't say Steichen. Steichen actually did really well. Obviously, you scored 35 points when you have score points in a losing fight in the Super Bowl. That's not saying a lot, but it is saying something. We did score 35 points on this team. It was a great game back and forth. I again, they said you can't handle making mistake after mistake after mistake. Was there situations that occurred that could have maybe changed the outcome that were not really thought about? It was Kansas City's turf guy that did this turf. The fact that 14% of the plays that they had, that the Chiefs had, where there was slippage, where there was 38% of the plays where the Eagles slipped, and on 38% out of those 38%, 5% of those plays, 5% were multiple slips. That is something to be said, that there was a stack of cleats on the Eagles sideline, and they didn't change the cleats at all on the Kansas City side. There's certain things to be said for that the equipment manager may be a little bit at fault there for not having the right equipment on his players at the right
I think
time.
the NFL office is at fault, to allow conditions like that.
Well, and there was a conversation that was had with the turf guy, because he was the same guy who did the field, when the Chiefs won the game, and they rotate around, I think, between 4 or 5 guys. I don't know that answer because I'm not privy to that information. But the Chiefs guy, they had an interview with him, and he's like, "Hey, you have to remain neutral." So the guy said specifically, if I had 2 hearts, one would be for the Chiefs and one would be for the Eagles. But he's only got 1 heart.
Well, Frank said they lost. First, he's questioning your comment. Lost focus. They dominated the first half, which they did. The Eagles did dominate the first half.
They did, but you look at the defensive coordinator did not make any adjustments whatsoever, and I feel that was the biggest issue and problem that occurred. That you need to stop. He obviously was majorly out half. Andy Reid specifically made plays to go up against what they do every play. Every play they do the same thing over and over again. And that consistency is what got you to the Super Bowl, but it also is what cost you 2 major touchdowns where there was nobody within 15 yards.
Well, I think Pags, they thought Mahomes was hurt. He may not even come back in the second half. I think that's why they didn't make adjustments that they probably would have.
I think, Mac, what I mentioned yesterday, Gannon, knowing he had the Arizona Cardinal head coaching job,
possible too.
Was he really 100% committed to the defense? I mean, I'm not saying he didn't put in the time, but emotionally, he wasn't going to be as invested as before. He knew he was out the door. He knew he was going to his other job.
But the offensive coordinator had another job lined up too, Jack. So I mean, I guess you could say that.
Here's where I now I can speak to that. I feel that the true offensive coordinator is Nick Sirianni. So, and I think that that's similar situation as it was in Kansas City, that the real offensive coordinator is Andy Reid. I know that the Eagles specifically And now Denver is starting to take that idea. They're really taking it from the playbook of the Eagles, where, you know, it's hard to have a Belichick, where Belichick had, one guy to rule them all. You know what I mean? But realistically, you want to have two head coaches, one for the offense and one for the defense. And I feel that that's what they're doing in Denver now. That's why Rex Ryan has come out, because they want to have such a strong presence on the defensive side. You want to have Sean Payton take care of the offensive side, and you want them to be very strong on what it is they're doing. Now, obviously, Sean Payton is the one who gets the final say because he is the head coach. However, you want to be able to have two head coaches. That's what the Eagles have done, since really Doug Peterson, because they realized that they did not want to have Chip Kelly run because he was an offensive guru, but he had no defensive prowess. And that's when they lost McDermott. And you think of all of the Eagles.
Did Rex Ryan come out? Is he the defensive coordinator now? Is he the
Denver,
defensive
yes.
coordinator for Denver? Wow. I didn't know that.
But I think something's to be said when these former coaches or any TV analyst is on the air. Now you get a new coach, and because they're fans of these shows. They watch these shows, and I'm sure Sean Payton watched a lot of ESPN, and he took a big liking to Rex Ryan. I don't see what the relationship is before this. Same thing with the Yankees when Brian Cashman hired Aaron Boone to be the manager. Boone was a former Yankee player for a little while, but he was an ESPN analyst, and Brian Cashman would be listening to the games. He liked Aaron Boone's style, figured he's non-threatening. Aaron Boone thinks the way he does, and he told Aaron Boone, why don't you apply for the manager's job for the Yankees? Aaron Boone wasn't going to apply otherwise. And I think Jeff Saturday, ESPN analyst, supposedly he was buddies with Jim Irsay, the Colt owner, but that's insane. You're taking him from the ESPN booth and especially, giving him an NFL job. But with that said, with Rex Ryan, you wonder, years have gone by. Has the game changed in the last 6 years or so? Could that be a difference maker in a negative way for him? I don't know.
I don't know either.
Well, we're going to find out very quickly. I think that I don't think that he's stopped watching film and stopped analyzing. I think that talent never really leaves. I think that's why he's able to get in there, and he's going to be able to do what he's done. Obviously, he has been, taught and has been ingrained in defensive prowess since the days of his father. You know what I mean? And that's why all the Ryans have been defense.
You have running quarterbacks now more than ever, the last 5-6 years. I mean, Randall Cunningham was unique, but now you have a number of guys like Randall Cunningham who run around. I mean, so how do you, defense that? Like if it could be a brand new thing for Rex Ryan, he should be able to figure it out. And Denver has a good defensive unit there. So,
well, yeah, I don't believe in the spy. I don't think the spy is what works. I think it becomes more a matter of staying in your lane, not overcommitting. You have to do certain things specifically to be able to handle different. You want to keep them contained. You want to be able to not allow them to get out of that pocket area and such. And there's a lot of.
It did work for Kansas City second half. I forget the guy's name. 32 was spying Hurts, and it did slow him down. I mean, it didn't stop him, but it did slow him down. So it does work to a point. Keep him in the pocket and having a spy there. It does work to a point.
I mean, I hate excuses, Mac, but the field conditions, I have to feel had a bearing.
No, I don't disagree. I don't disagree with you, Jack.
The Philadelphia pass rush wasn't the same. And we heard about how well the chief offensive line played, did the
It wasn't.
conditions contribute to
It was
that?
more the conditions. And you
But
watch,
how
if
did
you
it
watch
change the
what
fraction?
Baldinger said, Brian Baldinger was talking about it specifically and how great the Chiefs line played. But when you watch his plays, he's like, the defensive line was on the ground all the time, but the offensive line didn't really do much to do that. They literally, they would be pushing up against each other and their feet would fall out from underneath of them. I specifically what you don't see, and I've watched the game a few times since then, and I keep mentioning this one play specifically, and it may have changed a little bit, but may not have. The Patrick Mahomes 45-yard run. What happened in that play, because I was able to see it really specifically. Marcus Epps, who was the strong safety there, slipped, but he didn't just slip. He went into a split. So it took him a second to get back up and get his legs back underneath of him. Patrick Mahomes saw that and immediately started to run, in a very specific way. Had he not slipped, the line he would have been able to get. Patrick Mahomes would have definitely gotten the first down, probably would have gained 12 to 15 yards on that run, but would have been stopped there. But because he had that slip, the line he had to take was so severe different that he gained an additional 30 yards. And that play proved monstrous. So think about that. Now, would it have changed anything? No. They may have driven down the field and it still would have been with 4 seconds left. They were kicking off the ball and kicking the field goal. You know what I mean? So it may not have changed anything beyond that.
But look at all the plays like running backs would have the ball and lose their footing when they make a sharp cut. For both teams.
I mean, realistically, when you look at what happened with that Jalen Hurts fumble, I mean, he slipped, and that's when he lost control of the ball. So
that's a good point. That was out of character for Hurts for the ball to go out of his hand.
But Mahomes didn't. I mean, I understand what you guys are saying to a point, but listen, if what won that game was Andy Reeves out coaching the Eagles, and that's what really won that game. You could make all excuses you want.
But you to dismiss that, for you to just dismiss that, Mac, is ridiculous. I'm not making an excuse about it because everybody played on that field. But you're talking about the difference of where the Eagles players went through 3 sets of cleats, a lot of them, and no sets of cleats for the Kansas City Chiefs going through. That tells me that the equipment manager and the turf guy were on the same page, and the Eagles equipment manager and the turf guy were not. That's just a reality. That's a reality thing.
I think that's a lot of conspiracy, is what I think that is.
It's not a conspiracy. Obviously, they both had to play on it.
Wait.
14 to 38%. 14 to 38% is a real
They were playing
number.
Pags.
Those are real numbers.
They're playing on the same field, Pags. It's equal. And
all right, Mac. All right, you're right. I'm wrong. You're right. I'm wrong. I'm not even going to argue that.
Because your team slipped more, you're going to blame the turf manager or whatever. Listen, all things equal, if that field wasn't that way, if Patrick Mahomes wasn't hurt, I mean, we could go on and on. Andy Reeves was
and listen, I heard again. I think I spoke about this yesterday on how Patrick Mahomes was able to get back on the field. That if a normal halftime is only 15 minutes, so the process for him to get from all that happened, obviously. Somebody explained it. He's like, it takes 32 minutes for it to happen. That they have to cut open, they have to cut off all the tape, they have to do a very specific procedure, like ice it down, to a quick freeze. They use these steel rods to kind of get the swelling, and that takes a certain amount of time. Then they got to shoot it up with the Lanacane, which is legal, obviously, and then they got to wait 10 minutes for it to be able to take effect to see if there's any adverse reactions to the Lanacane. Then they have to do that steel again to get out the rest of the swelling, and then put on everything back and tape that back up. That whole process took 32 minutes. Mm-hmm. Well, if it was a 15-minute halftime, he wouldn't have been able to come back out immediately. He would have had to.
Right.
It would have
Right.
waited.
No,
But because it was a 37-minute halftime, he was able to get back out on the field and practice for 5 minutes throwing the ball and be ready to
but
go
we're
again.
on to
And
something.
that's a real statement there. That's real.
Wait. Pax, if this were a home game for the Chiefs, if this game went Kansas City, I could understand them messing around with the field because it did happen years ago with the Jets in an AFC Championship game at Miami.
Right.
There was a muddy field and it was left muddy by the Dolphins. You know, the Boston Celtics have been known to like turn off the air conditioning in the visitors' locker room and all. But this is the Super Bowl neutral field, and if there was hanky panky going on between the equipment manager, the field person who's supposed to be objective, and all, this could be potentially criminal in a way. If they
Yeah, but
conspire
there's
in any
it's
way
not
against the Eagles.
it's not something that can like again. We're not talking that it was 75% of the plays. We're talking 38% of the plays to 14%. There was an absolute advantage that was had by Kansas City on this field, and it had maybe a little bit to do with the fact that it was their turf manager originally who now works for the NFL to do that. So I can't, is it? Listen, it was. I said it was a full team loss. A full team loss.
Well, if
You
they
know,
played a 17-game schedule, just the two teams with one another, no one else, what's the record? I mean, I was objective.
I
For the
think it's
Jets,
I think it's 9-8. I think it's 9-8.
9-8. Yeah, I agree.
For each, and
Yeah.
we don't know who's going to have that upper hand. I mean, that's the hard part of that, because with injuries and stuff like that. But I think that these two teams, it was absolutely the two best teams in the league. And like I said, there
I agree.
was not
Agree with
enough room for error. The Eagles made two
Yeah.
critical mistakes and really one third
No.
mistake, and they were too closely matched for them to have that many mistakes and win the game.
But consider this: the Eagles were not matched tough their last few games before that, and that could have had a bearing in a tough game. Mentally to be mentally tough. No, I'll give an example. Last game of the season, they clinched the number one seed. Before the last game of the season, they lose at home against the New Orleans Saints. They had to be very complacent to lose to the same team at home. They were very complacent. The game after that, to clinch the number one seed, they beat the Giants' backups. The Giants aren't even playing their starters, so they weren't matched tough in that game. First game of the playoffs against the Giants never showed up. They weren't matched tough. That's 3 games in a row. Then they play a 49er team who didn't have a quarterback playing for them all.
Well, yeah, but that just covers the offense. The defense did come to play.
4 games in a row, they weren't matched tough. They weren't in a dogfight. You didn't have that tough mental edge. And then they get off to the great start against the Chiefs. They're winning at the half. I could tell you this. There was probably not one player in the league, in the Eagle locker room, who thought there was a good chance they were going to lose that game at halftime, okay? They probably figured, let's just get this over with and we're Super Bowl champs. So the mental toughness in the second half maybe just wasn't there because of the lead up to this.
I don't know. I mean, these guys are professionals. I mean, it's one of those things. I mean, obviously, if they didn't think that way, the very first drive, that Kansas City had, Kansas City's drives were taking 4.5 minutes. That was the average drive that they had because they were scoring pretty quickly. The Eagles' drives were taking longer. They were getting into third down and fourth down. I mean, how many? Yeah, well, and even in the second half, I mean, we got the ball back when they went up 29-21, I think it was at that point, because they had just, it was 35-27. It was what the score was, because we had kicked the field goal and then they went up. That drive still took like 8 minutes, and they gave the ball back with like 5 minutes left to go. So it was drives that the Eagles were quick drive. One drive where they got the ball out to Brown, that 50-yard pass, right at the beginning of the second quarter. That was the only fast drive that they had. Every drive that they had were long drives. And then you think about like when they needed to make a stop, that was when the the Chiefs had a 12-play drive. That was the longest drive of the game for them. And those are what I see. That were some of the things that the Eagles were not able to do and cost them the game. I don't blame
Look,
the turf. I don't blame the equipment manager. I don't blame Hertz for making the fumble. I do feel that the turf hurt the defensive line the most. That hurt the defensive line the most because the offensive line of the Chiefs did not play so great. They just didn't need to do much because all they had to do was just push the guy down and the guy slid down. And Patrick Mahomes got no pressure because they couldn't find the right cleats to get on there. And that's where I blame a little bit of the equipment manager. That's why I say this was a full organization team loss. It wasn't just one player.
Is Jalen Hurts the most popular player in Philadelphia right now? Is it Bryce Harper? Is it Joel Embiid? Is it someone else? Who's the single most popular player at this moment?
When you put it in those three, I'd have to know. That Jalen Hurts. That it would
Right
go
now.
Jalen Hurts.
Yeah.
That it would go Jalen Hurts. And I think Harper is number 2 because he was at the game. Obviously Joel Embiid couldn't be at the game because he was playing basketball. But obviously it's like I think that Harper is number 2 because of what he was able to do. And Joel Embiid hasn't gotten past the second round yet. So I think that although Joel Embiid is in that top 3, he is definitely number 3.
How is it greeting in Philadelphia at an Eagle game when Mike Trout shows up? He's an Eagle fan. So did the Eagle fans appreciate the idea he is actually one of them? Or did they look at it like he's an enemy? Let's say Mike Trout became a New York Met or whoever else is a rival of the Phillies, and then he shows up in an Eagle game to root the Eagles on. What kind of reception would a Mike Trout get?
Philly boys are always Philly boys, and even though he lives in Millville, New Jersey, he's considered a Philly guy, and I think that doesn't matter. When you are one of the best ever, in your sport, he's not really of that ilk, but he gets put into those conversations a little bit. I think that Philly's always going to love him, and it doesn't matter what team he ever goes to play for.
So
yeah.
Yeah, he says the Chiefs had the better coaching quarterback. That was the difference.
I don't think, Mahomes and Hurts were relatively even the game. I don't want to hear they won because the Chiefs had the better quarterback during the game.
What I do give Mahomes a lot of credit for is it doesn't matter how much you shoot that leg up, and how much whatever, you still got to do everything that you have to do. And he battled out there, and that's why he is probably right now, arguably one of the best, if not the best, currently in the NFL.
But Pax, as I recall, the last time, not counting when Jalen Hurts had to throw a Hail Mary at the end of the game and it was basically over that one play. As I recall, Jalen Hurts marched the Eagles down the field and got a 2-point conversion to tie it. I mean, He did his job. I mean, no other quarterback could have done it better.
I agree. And realistic. So, and like I said, if you take away the fumble, if you took away that fumble and that fumble didn't happen, and the same result occurred, it's likely that you would see Jalen Hurts be the MVP of the game, even in the loss. I feel that the fumble cost him. Now, I also know that the NFL doesn't like to give it to losing teams. You know what I mean? That there's now's the stigma of, hey, you have to. How is Disney going to be able to have that conversation with, Jalen Hurts and be like, hey, just lost the Super Bowl, but you won the MVP. What do you do now? You know what I mean? Like you're not going to be able to have that conversation. And Disney probably, has
Oh,
more to say about the MVP than anything else.
guys, one of the
But
best lines I ever heard was Jim Kelly after the Bills lost another Super Bowl to the Cowboys. He's in the ESPYs. The Cowboys with Jimmy Johnson are sitting in the audience. Jim Kelly goes to the mic and says, "I'm going to Euro Disney." That was kind of funny. Everyone cracked up.
right, yeah. But
Frank
that's you
Jack,
understand what I'm saying.
Frank says, Jack, you don't want to hear Mahomes is one of the greatest.
Mahomes is one of the all. Listen, he's one of the best ever. You have to rate him as the top quarterback in the game today. I mean, how can you say no to that? Jalen Hurts, how much money the Eagles are willing to give him? Are they willing to make him one of the top 3 paid quarterbacks in the NFL? I'm skeptical. I really am, because
I don't think the Eagles have a choice. I don't think the Eagles have a choice. I don't think they have a choice.
If it was Patrick Mahomes,
they don't have a choice.
Mahomes,
Jack, they don't have a choice.
Hurts has got to work.
I mean, what are you going to do? Who are you going to put in the Eagles that would be more better than Hurts for that system? I don't think there's too many quarterbacks you could. He's one of the best in the league. You're going to have to pay him.
No. My point is this: Mahomes, I can safely say, is another Brady. He's another Manning. He's another Elway. He's another Marino. He's another Montana. He's an all-time great. I could say Mahomes. I put him in that category with the all-time greats. Hurts, I don't want to say the jury's still out, but for him to join that upper echelon of all-time greats, he's still got a way to go.
Absolutely. He's his 3rd season, and he's been to the Super Bowl.
But to give him the
Mahomes
money,
3 seasons. Took Mahomes 3 seasons to get to the Super Bowl, and let's see what happens now next year. He's going to get the money.
I projected Jalen Hurts when they drafted him, and this was a compliment at the time, and he succeeded it. I said he's going to be another Doug Flutie, a good quality NFL quarterback. He's going to surprise people. He's more than surprised people. He's better than what Doug Flutie was, but Doug Flutie would have a couple of great runs where he was outstanding as well. And for all we know, if Doug Flutie at his prime was quarterbacking this Eagle team, he may have done a similar job to what Hurts did. I mean, perhaps. But they got to work something out. Hurts is a very intelligent young man. He's going to know to work something out with the Eagles, because it's a perfect fit for him all around. I couldn't imagine Hurts all of a sudden just going on the open market, because keep in mind, he wasn't a 2nd-round draft choice. Okay, there too. So it wasn't like a number 1 overall guy, but they'll work something out. Both sides will be smart enough.
I don't know. I think Hurts gets a nice contract extension.
Of course, he gets a great contract, Mac. But do you pay him as one of the top 3 quarterbacks in the NFL?
I don't know if you have a choice, Jack. I don't know.
Yeah, so I think that you do right now, because ultimately you're going to have Josh Allen and Joe Burrows right behind him, and you don't want to have them. You don't want to try to do it after those contracts. You have to do it now before those contracts really come up. And that's why. And I'm not in full belief, and I don't know this, but just looking at his demeanor and looking at the way he does things, that he is driven by the dollar as much as he is the championships. And I feel that when I think about who else was like that, I look at Brady, where Brady wasn't driven by the dollar. Now, Brady also had a wife who made 3 times as much as he did, so that there's a different story when it comes to the money. But it's not like Jalen Hurts is going to be broke, and by any stretch of the imagination. And I feel that he is more concerned with winning. And I feel that he's going to be able to get one of these contracts where he's going to get a lot of money, but it's going to be for a long term, and that he's going to be here for a little while, and that you're going to see some of the magic that can happen with Howie Roseman being able to do different things with the contract. And there's going to be like a season 2 years from now where they're going to have money left on the cap, that they're going to be able to force that money to Jalen and reorganize where he gets that money then, and the back end of the cap does. There's lots of things that can be done when you're dealing with an 8-year contract in the NFL, and I think that's what we're looking at here.
I was just going to ask you about that. Suppose he's really good in the middle of contract, and then he says, "Well, I want to renegotiate my contract." And you're
right. That becomes a matter of how do you, that's when, all right, maybe the dollar starts to influence him more than the wins, and that's
right.
as of right this second, when I look at this young man, and obviously he was at the pinnacle and didn't make it. You know what I mean? It's like I got to imagine he feels very similar to being benched for the national championship.
I got to ask you this. Let me make a comment before mentioning my next thought. When Jalen Hurts was benched for the national championship, when the game was over, now Alabama won, even though he was benched, you saw him being interviewed. He was beaming. He was so happy, and you got the feeling this guy's not putting on an act. He got benched, but they won. He really is happy. He's not faking
right.
it.
I think that he is. I think he's driven by the winning, not by the dollar.
Let me make a comparison, okay? Dak Prescott was playing very well for a while and eventually got his contract. Could Jalen Hurts wind up being another Dak Prescott? Come under the microscope in 2-3 years. Let's say there are no championships for the Eagles during that time, and his play becomes a little iffy, passable, okay, but not quite at the elite status.
It's always what have you done for me lately in this league? It's always what have you done for me lately in this league, and that's always going to be that way with this league specific. So I feel that at any moment he could be put on the that's a real statement. You know what I mean? Obviously, if he's not playing up to snuff, he's going to be scrutinized. And I think that's even the way he talked about this loss. You know what I mean? He said something that arm wrestlers say all the time: you either win or you learn. And he said that, and I know what I'm going to do and how I'm going to take from this, what I'm going to take from this, that even after I didn't play a perfect game, and it required me to play a perfect game to win. I didn't play a perfect game and we lost. So I can always strive for that perfection. And that's, he didn't say it that way. I'm definitely taking what he says and using my own words. But realistically, that is real. And I feel that he feels that way. He wants to win. And like I said, he's never going to go broke. I think that he was brought up very well. I think that his family is he's got a strong family unit who also has taught him how to be a quarterback, how to win gracefully, how to lose gracefully, and that you don't see many. I mean, here we're talking about Juju Schuster-Smith doing what he did. You know what I mean? And I pulled up the tweet and all of the people saying, what an ass. You know what I mean? For lack of a better way of saying it, that he doesn't know how to act when he's been there, because he hasn't been there before. He won't be there again.
Well, let's get on. Let's get on to another topic, Jack, because we got a couple more to cover. Let's talk a little bit about the XFL. I know Jack has wanted to make it a wrestling competition, entertainment instead of football. Maybe that's a good idea, maybe not. I know last year Jim Jeffcoat was talking about XFL, and some cities was really big. They were getting 60,000 people. In other stadiums, not so much. So what do you think the XFL has to do to survive for next year, Jack? What are your thoughts?
Well, when we say survive, they might have success in a couple of cities because they have a franchise in St. Louis and a franchise in San Antonio. And those cities don't have NFL franchises. So those cities might actually take to the XFL. But keep in mind, they're going to be playing their games during the baseball season. In St. Louis, they have the Cardinals. Okay, they don't have an NBA team in St. Louis, and San Antonio Spurs are out of it with that. They've got to be entertaining. You look at the rosters immediately, and what do you ask yourself? Who's playing? Who's on the team? And then you look at the quarterbacks. The two most recognizable quarterbacks are Paxton Lynch, who didn't turn out to make it with Denver, former #1 pick, and J.J. McCarron, who played for Alabama and was in the NFL with the Bengals for a little while. And neither guy quite cut it in the NFL. They've got to make the game entertaining with a lot of rule changes. I liked it being like the forward lateral, stuff like that. Open it up because, listen, when the ABA first started in basketball, Red Auerbach mocked the three-point shot that the ABA invented. Three-point shot, it took away from the game, but look what it meant for the ABA, a rule change like that. And if the XFL could be creative with certain rule changes to really open up the game, I mean, this sounds crazy, and you guys are going to laugh. And this happened when I was playing touch football with kids, when I was teaching. They taught me this, man and mo. The play's over. Your players are walking back to the, huddle, and then all of a sudden they never make it back to the huddle. They're running the field and you can pass to them. Maybe allow 1 or 2 man and mows a game to keep everyone on guard, everyone scurrying all over. It sounds comical. It sounds ridiculous. It's against traditional football, but the XFL cannot survive with traditional football. We're oversaturated. Too many sports are going on, guys. Too much is happening. PAGS has his soccer league going on the same time as the XFL. There's only room to have so much interest. So you got to distinguish yourself. We were talking about the YouTube generation, and XFL, they've got to make it entertaining. They've got to go off script. That's the only way. And I don't think they're going to go off script, despite The Rock being one of the co-owners of the XFL.
What are your thoughts, Pags?
I think the hardest part with the XFL is going to be competing against the USFL. That these are two separate entities here. There can be only one. I think that's part of the problem. And it's like, I get it, because you think about arena football and how arena football had Arena 1 and Arena 2 and Arena X. And, it was like there was 3 different leagues. And, ultimately the arena football team in Philadelphia was owned by Ron Jaworski. And to keep the league afloat, he had to own 4 of the 6 teams. You know what I mean? So ultimately it became no longer viable. And I know that they are trying to start arena football again in Philadelphia. So there is like a thought process, like, is it becoming too flooded? I think that the issue with the XFL is that, first off, the USFL has been very smart on how they are spending their money, and they are taking their time to spend the money, but that doesn't. And okay, let's get some years under our belt before we really start to try to get it into every city that we can. The XFL is like spend. And I think that that's what's going to be the demise of the XFL. I think that they got lucky with COVID.
Do they combine?
When COVID occurred.
Do they combine? I mean, did XFL and USFL combine? Would that help both leagues?
I don't know that answer. And the hard part about that is that you have to the fight that occurs about that, because USFL is owned by Fox Sports. The XFL is owned by Dwayne Johnson and other investors. And really it comes down to say, because
what about a fight between the two of them? The Rock starts arguing and they get enough of publicity where it could be an AFL, NFL type thing where they meet the champions of the XFL against the USFL, an all-star team of each. And it captures the imagination of the sports fan, the feud, because The Rock has a big personality. He can bring a lot
there is a little bit of credence to that, where you would have the World Bowl, where it's the XFL versus the USFL champions, and they play another game that would be like considered like the World Bowl. I think that there is something to be said for something like that. I don't know that it's in the works or could happen. I don't even know if the two leagues end at the same time. It's like I know that the USFL ended around July 4th.
Right.
I don't know when the XFL really is
Before
taking
that.
place.
Yeah,
Yeah,
before that,
so
because I know they were saying it's better for the XFL players because they get the chance to go to the camps early to try and get a job with USFL. The
well,
camps, the NFL is already swinging, so it's a
well
little
that
easier.
they get the camps don't start until afterwards. That the USFL was very particular about that, where they end the season before camps actually start. But you miss the OTAs, you miss the
Right.
invitations. That's part of that. But I don't know that that affects the NFL as much because I tell you, at the USFL Super Bowl, there were a tremendous amount of NFL executives, and trust me,
Yeah.
I was there. I saw them. You know what I mean? So they were definitely checking everything out. Like I said, there was a piece of me that believed that the Stars quarterback, had he not broken his leg, was going to be on an NFL squad because of the way he played. He wound up breaking his leg. No
That was it.
contract. But that
Right.
being said, I feel that the USFL has done everything kind of right to be a minor league to the NFL. Like I said, there were 42 players that were taken from the USFL this year, wound up on NFL rosters. And I think that
Right.
they have the criteria to be able to do things in the proper way. And they brought out like real NFL coaches. I mean, you had um, Jeff Fisher was coaching one of the
Right.
teams.
Right.
I
And most of those players, Pags, that were brought up with a lineman, especially offensive linemen, which is good. I mean, it's good. It's good for players to get a shot. One more topic before we go, guys. The best coach hire this season or this off season. The latest one, I would have to say, Eric Bieniemy going to the Washington Commanders. Right. I mean, here's his chance to improve the Washington Commanders offense. Maybe a chance to get a NFL head coaching job down the road if people can forgive what he did. So Eric Bieniemy, since it just came out, I'd have to take him. What do you think, Jack? You're muted, my friend.
You're mute.
DeMarco Ryan, the defensive coordinator, the 49ers, going to Houston. He played for them for years. He has a love of that franchise, that community. He did a heck of a job with the Niners, with their defensive unit. And the ownership, I know, hasn't always been patient at Houston, but they're going to be patient with him. They signed him to a 6-year contract. I hope for his sake, the contract is bumped up in the later years because I think the Texans are going to get better. And it's a really new thing. There's a certain excitement and energy he's going to bring to Houston. And I like that hire the best with the Texans. And they have the number 2 overall pick in the draft. They're in a nice position because if they don't care which college quarterback they get, if they're a couple they really like a lot, they could get Bryce Young, Stroud, whatever. They don't have to do anything.
Right.
That's after
firing 2 years and two coaches in 2 consecutive years.
Yeah, but Lovie Smith, they had dug up after a while. It was that type thing. And the coach before that, I forgot, they didn't like his philosophy. It's not the most stable franchise, let's put it that way. But keep in mind, about 3 years ago, they went to playoffs with Bill O'Brien. Okay, and then the wheels kind of fell off, with the Sean Watson saga. But I think they got a really good young coach now, and they kind of maybe turned the corner, the Texans.
Who would be your favorite or the best coach hire for you?
I actually agree with that. I mean, I'm big on DeMeco Ryans. I think he was a great player. I think he was a great defensive coordinator, and I think he'll make a great coach. I think that they have to be patient there. They have to do something that they're not used to doing, and that is being patient to let him change the culture. but I believe that he will change the culture there. He is somebody, when back in the day when the 49ers hired Mike Singletary, they hired him specifically. He knew some about coaching, but they wanted to change the mentality on the franchise. They wanted to be able to get back to the real of, hey, we want winners, we want to win. This is how we're going to change that up. And they, that's what Houston is doing. That's how Houston is changing this up. And I think that they really chose the right guy.
The problem with Singletary is he was a whack job, right? I mean, he wasn't a player's coach at all. I mean, the guy was just screaming at the players all the time. And
he expected everybody to play like him.
Right. He was a Chicago Bear All-Pro Super Bowl champion. And that's not every player can't do that. So he didn't last too long with the 49ers. So, folks, I want to thank you for tuning in. The Mac and Jack Sports Debate Show. Thanks to Pax for coming in and guest hosting with us. Some lively debates, some fun stuff. Jack brought us down a couple roads that I didn't think we'd go down, but that's what makes Jack so great, having as a co-host on the show. Hope you guys have a great Saturday. We'll see you tomorrow as the big football show is going to be turning into This Week in Sports. So we got a bunch of stuff lined up for you for tomorrow. A lot of NFL, of course. Have a great night, and we'll see you tomorrow.